So welcome to another episode, whatever, of StitchCraft. Uh, we are going to today look into triggers, specifically auth triggers, and then we'll touch a little bit on regular triggers, database triggers. So first, uh, let me switch over to my desktop. And I just want to point out that the blog post that I wrote from the last episode that we did is now live. So if you want to go to the mongodb.com blog, you can go and check that out. You can also see a bit of the sample code, but there's also a link to the recording on YouTube and with a link to the repo for the tag that I created, so you can see exactly the code that was worked on during that time. The other thing I've done was last weekend I was at Hop Hacks at Johns Hopkins University, and I had some extra time, so I cleaned up the code a little bit. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Let me go into our web UI folder. You'll also notice in the repo, I've got that link here. I've tried to give you some more instructions and some helpful scripts for setting up this project yourself. So if you want to fork the repo and clone it and create a secrets file here and do a deploy to your own Stitch instance, then you can do that. And hopefully this will help. If you are still having issues, let me know, and I will try to get that fixed. So back to our code. Let's go ahead and get that started. So I'm going to do an npm start so we can see what's going on. So it's going to look a little different. One of the things that I did, and of course it opens it over here. So let's go move this over here. So one of the things that I did was I cleaned it up a lot using semantic UI. So there's a handy package of components that you can use to kind of make things look a little prettier. I like it because I'm lazy and I'm not that great with CSS, and it allows me to kind of get things up and going really quickly. And so as you can see, it does look a little better. I moved the upload element. I styled it using the semantic UI. It now has a nice little welcome message with our picture that we get from Google Authentication. There's a logout button now, which is very helpful. So if I log out, this is really all you see, and then I can log back in, and I choose my, oh, well, that's sad. Let me figure out what happened there. I wonder if I lost my token. So this might be a good time to open up my Stitch app and see what's going on. So I'm going to log into my cloud account. And I logged in earlier. Excellent. I don't have to put in my token and everything. So we can actually, if we go into collections, we can see that there's some things in there. We just saw it a moment ago. It's possible that I could have logged in with the wrong user account. Always fun. All right, so here is our pickstream collection, and here are some entries that I have put in. And so now let's go into the Stitch app and the pickstream application that we created last week. And then I just want to check the users. So we do have 3 users. Here's my user. Okay, good, it's the right one. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to log out and then log back in again to see if it was just error for me picking the wrong one. So I am going to pick my Tingen account. and again, it came back with nothing. Swell. What if I refresh? So apparently we've got something going on where it's not firing whenever the page loads. So we'll have to take a look at that. But just briefly, I put all the images in a grid with 3 columns. Very easy to do with the semantic card and card groups. So everything is being displayed. I'm basing the time. I'm kind of using the same way that Instagram shows their time. So if it's within the same week, we'll look at that function. If it's in the same week, it's going to tell you how many days ago, etc. If it's more than that in the same year, it's going to tell you the month and the date, and if it's greater than that, it's going to throw in the year. And then I threw in a nice little title, so when we hover over, we can see the exact time that it was uploaded. One thing that you'll notice is, where we should have the username, all I have is this GUID. Not very helpful, but what we did last week, we did not record like any other information other than the owner ID. So today I'd like to fix that so we know who we are whenever we upload it. So let's go ahead and put that data in there. That will save us doing any kind of lookup or any kind of join. And as with MongoDB, keeping data together is something that we're good at doing. So let's go dive into the code and just look at what I did over the weekend. So inside the web UI, source, one thing to note, in our Stitch app, I cleaned up this handle file upload code. It's a little cleaner now. I'm actually returning promises and chaining bins appropriately. Sometimes whenever I do things really fast, it comes out a little messy, but I clean that code up, especially to put it on a blog post. So as you can see, there's just a single thread of bins. And then in the file input, I changed that around. So I'm using the semantic UI React input instead of the kind of the built-in input that HTML gives us. And so that allows me to do some fun things where I can attach a button with an action. And so I can say that it's a submit button and it's small, and I can put an icon on it and tell it where to put it, and it really looks nice. And that's basically it. And so I took that and I moved that up into a menu bar. And so there's a lot of things here. It could probably be componentized a little bit more, but just to make everything look pretty, through a menu at the top, which has our login, our logout button, our file upload control, and then just a nice little kind of welcome image with an avatar picture. Okay, so the feed. The feed is essentially just a card group. And here I put the items per row as 3. I could do something, later where I pass in the number of columns. So we could, whenever it's called, we could maybe dynamically change the number of columns. So if we wanted to do a thing where there was like a 1-column feed, like you see on Instagram, versus the multi-columns, because I know you can switch back and forth, we can build that in using this component. So this is the format date function that I wrote using Momentum. If you haven't checked out Momentum, it's pretty great. It allows you to do those different queries and different formats where you can tell it how many days from now, and that's pretty great. So you can see that if it is before 7 days from now, so within the same week, it's going to format the string with the date from now, and that tells you like how many hours, how many days from now. And then if it is the same month, then we're just going to format with the month and the day, and then otherwise we're going to give it the month, the day, and the year. And so that's just a handy little function that I wrote to format the date. Cool. So back to the feed, I guess I should show you where I'm getting this data. So back in the Stitch app, and this could kind of solve why it's not refreshing whenever I whenever I actually log in. I guess I didn't test that. But whenever the component mounts, this was part of the authentication that we did last week. If the state is authenticated, then we're going to grab the entries. And so this is just a simple function that uses the MongoDB service. We use this to insert data into the service before, and now I'm just using it to do a find. And so I'm finding everything because I don't really care if it's only mine. I kind of want everything. And the way that we set the collection up is I have the ability to read all of the images, but I can only write my own. So that allows us to see anybody who's posted to their stream. So this is kind of a feed that has every photo that's been inserted. So I'm going to grab everything, and then I'm going to sort it by this timestamp that we put on. So that way I can see the newest ones first. And then, so this returns a cursor, and running as array on it returns a promise. And I am simply taking the array of entries and setting the state. And so that's how I get the entries. And you can see here where I threw this feed, and I'm just passing it the entries. And so this is an array of entries that maps to the data that we got back. And so over in feed, we're going to be working with only the data that we had. So I did not change the underlying data structure or anything. I was just using it as I had it. So you can see here for the card content, I'm just giving it, printing out the owner ID. So that's all I had. Every card needs a key, so we're just going to utilize the underscore ID. That's our index on the collection. And then I'm just writing out the date. So it's very simple. A lot of the styles and everything were built into Semantic UI. It just made it really nice. Was able to put together a nice app without having to do a lot of like CSS and things like that. Okay, so all this code is available online. If you've noticed, can't notice there, but I went ahead and created a new branch. So I'm going to do everything in a new branch, and then I'll merge it in, and I'll create a new tag, so that way we can keep track of what we're working on from week to week. So the first thing we should probably do is write a little more information whenever we upload a file. And so we can go back to our file upload handler where we're actually doing the insert. So you can see after we convert it to a binary object, here's where we upload it to S3, and then we take that result and we insert it. Okay, so we're currently giving it the owner ID. This is needed by the rules, so we know who's allowed to modify what files, who's allowed to read and who's allowed to write. So we're going to leave that alone. I'm passing it the URL to the picture that's being used in the feed. We've got information about the file. We got the file name and the file type, the e tag that we kept for some reason. I don't really think it's necessary, but why not? So let's add a little bit more owner information. Now, if we go back to when we set up our users, we told the provider that we wanted to grab some extra information. So we grabbed name, which is the full name, first name, last name. We grabbed the picture, so I'm using that. The email is nice. And some other things that we're probably not going to use. Actually, so a lot of this comes back as blank. So let's see what all of that looks like. Where is, all right. So I'm going to go over here and let's just do a console log. So if is auth, because we don't want to do this console log if we're not authenticated because bad things happen. Console.log. And the information is at this.client.auth.user.profile. Cool. Just want to print that out. That way we can see what we're working with. All right, let me go to the right thing. And let's first open up the console. And we are going to refresh. I guess we've already refreshed a couple times. And we can see what's coming back. Cool, so birth date, undefined. Email, well, we got that. First name, got it. Last name, got that. Full name, picture ID, which would be helpful. So whenever we are writing information to the photo, we really want to keep only kind of a limited amount. So let's go ahead and write, I don't think we're going to need to break up the first name and the last name, so let's just utilize the full name. Since we're using Google authentication, we don't really have to worry about usernames, so we'll just tag the full name of the person who's writing it. So we'll go back over to our code base and go to the Stitch app, back to the function here, and underneath here, I'm going to do owner name. And so we can get that by doing this .client.auth.user.profile.name. And so, and then a comma. And so now, whenever we upload a file, we'll also keep the name. And now let's go over to the feed, and let's use that name. So let's do entry.owner name or entry.owner ID. So for the ones that we've already updated, there could not be a name. Once again, the kind of the flexible schema of MongoDB. So we can continue going without having to like delete the data or go back and make sure things are entered in. So if we save all this, everything should be fine, and it looks pretty much the same. I'm going to remove that console log because it's kind of annoying. I guess I could just close the thing, but definitely not needed. Cool. All right, I'm going to close this drawer here. So nothing's changed. So let's see if it worked. So I'm going to choose a file, and I moved all of my files, pictures into my pictures, and let's just grab one. Here is a picture, something from BitCamp. All right, this was the winner of a raffle at BitCamp. I'm going to go ahead and open, and I'm going to upload, and it came in, and awesome. We have, now we know that this picture was uploaded by me, and that it happened a few seconds ago, and if we hover, we can actually see the date that it came in. Cool. So we've taken care of that. But now what happens whenever somebody changes their info? Like, it's people get married, people change their names, people change their names for, any reason they want. It's their name. So let's handle that. And then this will also kind of get us ready. This is a single page app. There's no routes in. We haven't put in React router. We're not pulling in we're not pulling in like user profile pages. It's very simple. So let's go ahead and create a users collection, because right now only a user can see their own info from Google Auth. So if other people want to see like first name, last name, picture ID from another from another person, if I wanted to link this and send this to my profile, then there'd be no way for them to get that information. So we're going to create a users collection, and we're going to use auth triggers to help us fill that collection. So that way we don't have to build anything on the front end to add user information to this collection whenever people log in. We can use a trigger that fires on login. So let's go back to our Stitch application. And we're going to go back to the Atlas clusters configuration. Oh, sorry, the rules. And we're going to add a new collection. And so we're going to add a collection to the database data, because that's the one that we're using. And the collection name is just going to be simply users. And again, we're going to use the template users can only read and write. Oh, sorry, not that one. We're going to use users can read all data, but only write their own data. And so that way, if we ever get to the point where we want users to be able to update data, maybe we'll start adding more information to this collection. Only they'll be able to add it. And the cool thing about rules is we can go back, and if we want, the user owner to see more information than what we are showing everybody, we can use rules to filter out on the field level. So that's pretty cool. For the user ID field, I'm just going to make this easy, and I'm just going to call it user ID. And that is going to end up mapping to the user ID that we get from authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and add this collection, and so now we're good to go there. Cool. And so let's take a minute to look at the docs, because it's always good to go to the docs and see what we're going to be doing with these triggers. So this is under events triggers, and we'll just go to the overview. So there's application events, so database event triggers. So if something changes in the database, we'll use that later. And then there are authentication event triggers. So this is what we're going to use to help us fill this info. So we are going to need to create, I think we're going to do a create and the login operation type. So the first time somebody logs in with Google, we need to make sure that the information is written to this collection. And then every time they log in, we want to make sure that there are no changes to specific fields. Yeah, no, we'll just make sure that any changes are updated. We'll deal with specific fields later. So let's create, and so like here's a create new user document example, and you know what, that's going to come in handy. So let's go back over to our application console or admin console, and we're going to go to triggers, and we're going to add, let's go to authentication trigger. We're going to add an authentication trigger, and we're going to call this new user and enabled, and let's make it fire on create and login. Oh, okay, one at a time. So we're just going to do a create one first, and we're going to do Google provider. That's the only one that we're using right now. And then let's create a new function. And I think what I'm going to do is just write one function and then create two triggers, because we can use an upsert. So if it doesn't exist, insert it. If it does exist, update it. Just so I'm not filling a whole bunch of triggers or creating a whole bunch of unnecessary functions. So we're going to call this actually upsert user. All right. And then whenever you create a new field, there's all these handy things that we can use. But we're basically going to look at what they're doing here in the example. So I'm going to steal this. So whenever we're working inside functions, I know we haven't talked about server-side functions before, but we have access to our services through context. And so I'm just going to grab that, and I'm going to get an instance of our MongoDB service. We've done this on the front end, and it's pretty much the same thing, but we're going to do a little bit different. I'm I'm just going to ignore that stuff for right now. So we've got an instance of our database. And now we want to, we're going to get our users collection. So that is as simple as saying const users is equal to Mongo, the MongoDB service that we just connected to, .db, and we need to give it the DB name of data, and the collection is users. And so now we have a reference to our users collection. Now we just need to do an insert. Let's see if that's what they're doing. So they're grabbing some information from the auth event. Actually, let's take a look and see what that is. This will be a great look at how to use the debug console. And it looks like we don't have the debug console unless, no, that's not helpful. All right, so actually I'm going to save it. It's not really going to do anything, but that should allow me to go over to the functions UI and kind of get access to our debugger, so where we can actually run the function and have it be able to console log. So we're going to go into that. And so here's our console down here. And I am just going to console.log. Where is it? The auth event. Yeah. So whenever the function triggers, it's going to be passing us some information in the auth event. The function editor loves semicolons. So if you don't love semicolons, pretend for the sake of the editor here. And so now I'm just going to run this as a system user. You have the ability to run things as different users. So if you're building things that are dependent on knowing who is running the function, you can change the user. And so I could actually choose my user and run it as that, but I'm just going to use the system user. And we're going to run this function. And oh, good news. We're not actually going to see what's in that auth event by doing that because it's not being passed. All right, so let's go back to the docs. It passes an event object. So let's open that in a new window. Cool. Does it go into more detail about what those are? Okay, go. The time at which the event occurred. So that could be good. That could be a login time. So like a last login, maybe. A user object, and that's going to kind of be the information that we saw whenever I did that console log earlier. But let's go ahead and fill that out. Nope, it looks like data. Cool. And so here's when using Google or Facebook authentication, the data field contains the metadata associated with the user. So we're going to be pulling things from that. All right. Where did our file go? So if we look back at this function here, nope. This one down here, we'll still some more things. So let's create our new user object. And so const user is equal to, and so let's go ahead and grab that last login, and we're going to make that equal to the auth event dot time. Let's go back to our auth events and make sure I'm not messing anything up. Time. Cool. And right, now we're going to fill out this other stuff. So let's grab name And so that will be the combined name. So actually, I am going to pull out that user. Let's just go ahead and do that, just to make the code a little cleaner. So now I can just change out the time. And now I have user, and so we said that that was user.data. And if we go over here to the data, we can pull out name. I really need to remember where these are. Okay, let's also grab the email. And so that's user.data.email. We can grab deciding if I want to break that up. So let's break that up. Well, who needs flat data? So we'll call this full for full name, and we'll do first user.data. First underscore name, first and last. First underscore name, and we'll do last as user.data. Last underscore name. So we've got their last login, their name, their email, and let's grab their picture ID. I think that's the last thing that we would really care about at this point. So dot picture. Cool. So picture, and that's going to be user.data.picture. And we'll find out what semicolon. And what are you? User has already been declared. We'll name him new user. Excellent. So don't need that anymore. And now in the example over here, they're simply inserting one. We're going to do an upsert. And to do that, we're going to use, oh, they're doing an async function. That's fun. Cool. All right. So we're going to actually do an update one and give it the option of upsert. So if we go over to our tutorial, we go to MongoDB Atlas, we go to actions. If we look in update one, you can see that there is an options parameter that we can pass, and we can give it upsert true. And that way we'll upsert a document if it doesn't already exist. So let's do that. So now we can do users dot update one. And so now we're going to do the match. And you know what? We should make sure that we have the user ID. There it is. So user.id. And let's go back. And so the check that we're going to do is user underscore ID is user.id. And then the second thing, I'm going to put a semicolon there so it's not as upset. We are going to give it our new user document that we just created. And then we're going to pass in an object, and we'll look back at the docs to make sure I don't make a silly mistake. And we'll pass it upsert as true. All right, upsert true. And because I'm not writing an async function, it's going to return a promise. And we're just going to return that. I don't really care about the rest of it. So this function will take the auth event. It will create a user from it, and it will upsert that. So cool. Let's save this function. And now let's go in and create another trigger, authentication trigger, to handle our update user. So add authentication trigger, and we're going to call this update user. So if we log in and it's on the Google, and then we're going to select that function that we just did, upsert user. So whether you create or log in, you're going to run it, and we'll hit save. And now we get to do the big scary thing where we see if this actually works, which hopefully it will. So I'm going to go over here to our running application, and I'm going to log out. And this time I'm going to log in with a different Google Auth, which is nice because I can just delete it and log in again if we need to try this again. So I'm going to use my personal Google account. And since it's the first time, I have to give it access. Still need to fix that update, but that's not really the focus of what I want to do now. So we'll just run a refresh. Nothing seemed to break, but then again, we didn't change anything on the front end. So now we can go back over here, and I'm going to open this in a new window so we can take a look at the data. And with any luck, we're going to have information in there. So let's take a look at our collections that are in our cluster. Yeah, fingers crossed. Retrieving the data. Oh, it's still working. Excellent. Oh, this is a good sign. We have a users collection, and so whenever we look at the documents, there are 2 of them. Oh, because here's something that's fun. We didn't actually write the user ID, did we? Let's take a look. No, I think we did. I don't know. We'll take a look anyway. So the good news is the trigger ran. Hey, guess what? Guess what we did not do? We did not write the user ID. Yep, called it. So we have it down here. I'm going to put that up top. So user ID is user.id. And put a comma there. I'm going to save this function. And let's go to our users and find the user that I just did here. So we'll do a little cleanup here just to make sure that this is the right one. This is my personal one. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to delete this user. I'm going to delete this user. We're going to go over here and use the Data Explorer, and we're going to delete these. So delete document. And the reason there are 2 is because a create user fired and then a login fired. So that makes sense. The upsert didn't really work because there was nothing to check against. I guess the upsert did work. It did inserts. All right. So users is empty. And I'm going to go back over to my application. I'm going to close that because it's not really going to make a difference. I'm going to log out. And now I'm going to log back in. And we're going to choose that. And it should, oh, okay. So it didn't prompt me. It must have remembered. All right. Now to go look at the data. So let's go back over to Data Explorer and go back to users. I'm gonna reload the documents. Hey, there it is. Awesome. So we got the last login time. We've got the user ID. We've got my email, and we've got my name object, and the picture. So now we have some information, and we didn't really have to do anything. The cool thing is, let me log out, and I'll log back in with my MongoDB account. So let's log in with Tingen. This is really annoying. We'll just refresh. And then we go back over and let's refresh this. Because we are writing on login, you can see that it went ahead and filled in an object for my other user, even though we had already created one that login is checking. And it's using that same function, so that's really nice. So we got two triggers, one function, and we're now writing data. So now comes the issue, what if I change my name? Maybe I start going by my initials, so I'm AJ Howard. We need to capture that. So right now we are. Whenever you log in, it's going to update this object. So that's great. But what's not great is our data in our pick stream is out of date. So we have one in here that has a username or an owner name. And so we need to make sure that that's up to date. So we can create another trigger to handle that. I believe they call it like data fan out. And so we can watch, put a watch on the user's collection, and if it updates, and specifically if that full, that name.full updates, that's when we want to do the data fan out. There's, probably better ways to do it, but this is kind of my example of doing a database trigger. So cool. Let's go back over to our triggers, and this time we're going to create a database trigger. But let's pull up. I've got so many tabs open. Let's close some of these. All right, so let's go back to our event triggers and take a look at the database triggers. So it's always great to look at the documentation. And then the fun thing is, if the page wasn't helpful, you can report it, and our docs team will fix it. So all right, we're going to create a trigger, and we're going to look at the database triggers. Excellent. All right. So let's go back over to the console. We're going to add a database trigger. See if we can get all this done in like 15 minutes. I have a good thing about running over. All right, and so the trigger name for this is, we're going to call this, let's update pick data. Sure, names are fun, names are hard. So the source details is, we're going to look at the database data. We're going to watch the collection name. That's going to be users. Now we got operation types. This is where I was confused, because for database triggers, we can do multiple operation types. So whenever we have an update, we want to, do we need the full document? We might not need the full document. So what the full document does is, whenever there's an update in the return, and let's take a look at what gets returned. So this is setting it up. This is the parameters. Where is that? Back in here. Cool. So what gets returned to us is an update description, which will tell you what fields were updated, what fields were replaced or removed. And then also, you could have the full document. So if we do an update on my user document, and we could return that full document. So that way, if you want to see more than just the complete document, and not just what was updated, um, it's a little more intensive, and I don't like to use it if I don't need to. For this one, we are going to check to see if specific fields are going to be updated, and if they are, we will just deal with that data. So I think we don't need the full document. Okay, and so we need a function. We're going to create a new function, and we're going to call this update owner info. We'll just leave it pretty generic, because we could go back and change it if we end up storing more than just a full name. I'm going to leave it like this because I prefer to use the function UI. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at this advanced. And so this is where we can give it a match expression. So like I said, we only care if the full name has been updated, because that's the only thing that we're using in this other collection. So if the anything else in the collection, if we start adding like favorite color and somebody updates that, it really has nothing to do with what we're triggering here. And so we want to be able to say, don't run this function every time, because as you saw, every time we log in, we're doing an update to this collection. And so we don't want a whole bunch of writes happening whenever it doesn't need to. So let's put in a match expression and be in the right window. So match expression is just a document, and we are going to check the update description dot updated fields. So updated description will have like updated fields, removed fields. For now, I'm just going to deal with the updated fields. And then I need to see if the first name exists. So, yeah, I hope because I nested it, it doesn't give me any issues. But so we're going to do name dot full, not the first name, the full name, and we're going to say exists true. Sure, yeah, why not? And I'm going to save. Okay, and so we have a trigger, we have a function, we've got a match expression, and now let's go over and fill out that function. So I'm going to steal some things from this other function before we get started. I'm going to steal these two things. Go back to functions so I don't have to type. And again, I'm just going to ignore this comment, but at the same time, I'm not going to delete it because it could be helpful. It's just a comment. Okay, so we're going to grab our MongoDB service, and we're going to grab our pickstream collection. So let's make sure that, so pickstream is the name of the collection. So let's pickstream and change this to pickstream. Cool. And so what we want to do is go back over here and see what operations we have available to us. So we go back to MongoDB Atlas and back to the actions. We're actually going to do an update mini because we want to update all of the picture items where the owner ID is equal to the user ID. Actually, I think we're going to need the full document now that I think about it, because that's not going to change, and that's the only way we're going to get that. So let's go back to nope, not that one. So let's go ahead and save this and go back to our trigger and turn on full documents, because that would give us access to the user ID that is in this document. So I guess we care about more than just the field that changed. All right, so let's turn on full document and save. Okay, back to the function. Now, because we have that match in there, we can assume that all we need to do is do that update mini. Because it's gonna run. So let's do pickstream dot update mini, and we'll go back to our handy documentation here. Cool. So we're going to update mini, and we're going to, that's an increment one, that's fun. We want to update where the first parameter should be the filter. And so this is where we're only going to update. I got to find my thing. We're going to update where the owner ID is, oh my gosh, semicolon's fine, equal to the change event, spell it correctly, dot full document dot user ID, and then we have the update operation, and we're going to do a $set, and we are going to set the owner name to the, let's go ahead and use it. Actually, let's pull this out just to make it a little cleaner. So user ID is equal to change to full. Document is equal to event. All right, and from that we need user ID and owner. Oops. We need full name, or we need the name from that. I'm erring on caution and just putting it on multiple lines. I don't want that to, yeah, okay. And so the full name is equal to name. All right. Now, so the owner name, we're going to set that to full. And we can take out this, kind of make that look nicer. And we're going to return that. So we'll return that promise. So this will return promise, and it will give you the regular update many. So how many are actually updated. And so we'll save this. And so this will run anytime we update that data. I should probably go back. If we're using the Data Explorer or Compass to update information, then that actually triggers a full update. So let's go ahead and change this so it takes a full update so we can kind of run this just by modifying modifying it in Data Explorer. So replace, see changes. Okay, so cool. So let's go over and look at our pick stream. And let's pick on, so these don't have an owner ID, but I know that these are mine. So let's go in here and see if we can trigger this, trigger by modifying my name option here. Actually, let me go back and check one thing. Okay, cool. All right, so here we go. This is fingers crossed time. Is this going to work? I'm going to change my full name here to, well, we're going to say that I'm going to go by AJ from now on. And we're going to update. All right. So if we go to Pigstream, we're going to load the documents. I am not seeing where it ran. So that's cool. That's why we have logs. Let's see what happened here. So we got an auth trigger. We've got a MongoDB Atlas function. What is that? That's a find. We got a lot of auth triggers going on. But we don't have that. Let's see. Can we figure this out? So it looks like that function wasn't even ran. Let's go back to the triggers. It could be that our match expression is not working. So let me take that out for right now. Paste this over, excuse me, somewhere where I can see it again. We're going to save. So now it's going to run every time. All right. This is not something that I recommend doing, but we're going to see what's going on with it. All right, so let's go back to users. And we're going to change my name again. So we'll edit, go into the name object, and we'll change it to, let's just change it to just AJ. Just going to go by just my initials, so not even my last name. We're going to update. Do we even want to check? Should we go back to the console? So let's look in the logs. We have a database trigger. So it was in our match, and I bet you, not only that, but that it errored. So full document is not defined. That's what I get. That's what I get for thinking I could remember things. This is why I keep going back to the docs. They're helpful. All right. Application events. Always look for an example code, which I don't have. Full document. Let's see. All right, so it's saying full document is not defined. Not even going to look at that yet. So we'll go back into our functions for update owner info. Oh, how about capital D? Is is good. This is great, great stuff. Let's also console log. That way we can see what's going on if I flub it up again. So let's see a full document. And of course, semicolon. Save. And now let's make that trigger fire again. Sometimes it's nice to mess up because it helps us learn. I learn a lot from my mistakes. So we're going to edit, change the name. We'll just go ahead and put my last name back on. I'm running out of names for myself. And we're going to update. And so that's going to update the document. We'll go back over here to the logs. Bum, 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 bum. We have a trigger, and it worked. It's a wonderful log that we have there. It didn't stringify it, but that's fine. So now let's go back to Data Explorer, and if we look at PickStream, we are going to see owner name. Awesome. So all of these have owner names. So if I go back over to our application and do a refresh, all the ones that I uploaded are there. I guess I thought I uploaded that with my new user, but I did not. And so you can see that there's one left. We had one person, join and upload a file, and so the next time I log in, we didn't do a trigger on insert. We probably could have, but it would update to them. So kind of have an open issue getting that match to work. I messed up that document, but I'll do some looking and update somewhere and let you all know. But we were able to change the feed. We created that collection using only login and create triggers. So we are now getting information on our users as they log in and as they join. And then if they change their full name, which is what's needed in that PickStream object, we do a fan out update for that. And so that's pretty great. So we've created 2 authentication triggers that point to the same function. And then we created a database function that watches that user's collection for changes and updates the pictures accordingly. So that is all I wanted to cover today. And I'm only about like 5 minutes over. So I think this is pretty good. But thank you all for joining. And I'll have this uploaded to YouTube shortly. Thanks. See you later.